So let's start. Number 10. The Bloop. In the summer of 1997, hydrophones stationed in the deep Pacific Ocean picked up a sound so strange that scientists spent years arguing about what could have made it. The signal was low. It rose slowly. It stretched across the ocean at a magnitude that dwarfed any known animal call ever recorded. They called it the Bloop. The sound had one detail that made it especially unsettling. It matched, in broad shape, the acoustic profile of a living creature, the way it swelled and faded, the way it carried across water. But the volume was wrong. It was far louder than any whale, any known fish, any known creature that has ever been cataloged in the marine record. For years, that fact alone kept theories alive that the ocean was hiding something massive, something biological, something that had never surfaced long enough to be seen. Eventually, scientists proposed a more measured answer. The bloop, they suggested, was most likely an icequake, the sound of a large ice mass breaking or fracturing far to the south, near Antarctica. Under that interpretation, the bloop is not a creature at all. It is geology, translated into sound and carried thousands of kilometers by a medium that lets low frequencies travel with almost no friction. That is one version of the story. But the reason the bloop still shows up on lists like this is simple. The original recording did not sound like ice to the people who first heard it. It sounded biological. It sounded alive. And even after the icequake explanation was offered, a quiet unease remained. Because if the deep ocean can produce a sound that fools trained analysts into hearing an impossibly large creature, then we are being reminded of something more important than any single explanation. We do not really know what is down there. The bloop is not just a mysterious sound, it is a mirror. It reflects the limit of our own hearing, the limit of our own instruments, and the limit of a mapping project that has covered only a small fraction of the deep ocean in detail. Whatever made that sound in 1997 may already have a boring answer, or it may not. Either way, the recording is still played in classrooms and documentaries as a reminder that the ocean floor is not silent. Something down there is talking. We just are not always sure what it is. Number 9. The Baltic Sea Anomaly. In 2011, a Swedish deep-sea diving team scanning the floor of the northern Baltic came across an image on their sonar screens that immediately felt wrong. What they saw did not look like a natural formation. It looked like an object, round, structured, sitting at the bottom of the sea with what appeared to be a long trail extending behind it, as if it had slid to its current position from somewhere else. The object was quickly nicknamed the Baltic Sea Anomaly. Photographs and sonar images spread rapidly across the internet. To many viewers, the shape looked disturbingly familiar. Some compared it to a large mechanical disc. Others noticed what they interpreted as symmetry, straight edges, even the outline of a landing structure. Within weeks, speculation had grown well beyond anything the divers themselves had claimed. Investigations that followed offered a more grounded view. Analysis of the surrounding rock and sediment suggested that the anomaly is most likely a geological formation. Glacial deposits, unusual mineral distributions, and irregular seabed topography can produce shapes that, when scanned with side-scan sonar, appear artificial. That should have closed the case. It did not. Because the interesting part of the Baltic Sea anomaly is not whether it is metal, glacial, or something else entirely. The interesting part is how quickly a single sonar image was able to grip millions of imaginations. Human beings looked at a low-resolution scan of an underwater object and instantly built entire theories on top of it. Ships, devices, craft, structures. That reaction reveals something important about how we experience the deep ocean. We assume, quietly, that the seafloor is a canvas of hidden shapes we simply have not seen yet. And whenever a shape emerges that even loosely resembles something artificial, part of the human mind is already prepared to accept it. The Baltic Sea Anomaly is probably a rock formation with an interesting shape. But the fact that it caused a global reaction is a fact about the ocean, not just about the object. It is a reminder that the deep is not just water and darkness. It is also our own imagination, poured into a space we cannot see, waiting for anything to be revealed. Number 8. The Yonaguni Monument. Off the coast of Yonaguni, a small island at the southern edge of Japan, divers have been swimming past something for decades that continues to divide experts. At first glance, it looks like a set of massive stone steps rising out of the seabed. Broad, flat surfaces, straight edges, right angles, terraces that seem stacked in an almost architectural rhythm. If you saw it on land, without context, you would assume it was the remains of an old ceremonial platform, a ruin, a wall, a quarry. The problem is that this structure is underwater, and it appears to be very old. The debate around the Yonaguni Monument is one of the most fascinating unresolved questions in modern archaeology. Some researchers argue that the formation is entirely natural. Regional geology, they point out, produces angular fractures in certain sandstone layers. Under the right conditions, erosion can create features that look human-made but are actually the result of straightforward physical processes. Others disagree. Some divers and researchers have identified what they interpret as tool marks, drilled indentations, and geometric features that are difficult to explain through natural fracture alone. If those interpretations are correct, the Yonaguni Monument would push back the timeline of coastal architecture in the region by an uncomfortable amount, into a period when the area may have been above sea level during a lower stand of the ocean. That is where the tension sits. Because the ocean, over the course of many thousands of years, has swallowed vast portions of coastline. Sea levels during earlier periods were significantly lower. Regions that are now underwater were once dry land. If ancient societies built anything on those coastal plains, some of that construction is now, by simple geographic logic, beneath the sea. Yonaguni forces that possibility into direct focus. Whatever it is, natural formation, ancient ceremonial site, or some combination of both, the monument stands as a reminder that the coastline we walk today is not the coastline that has always been. Underneath the current shoreline, buried under sediment and coral, there may be more of the human story than the standard timeline has room for. Yonaguni may be a rock, or it may be the reason we have to widen our history. The debate is quieter now than it was a decade ago, but the object is still there, still stacked, still stepping down into the dark. Number 7. The Milwaukee Deep Sonar Wreckages. Deep beneath the surface of the Puerto Rico Trench, one of the deepest points in the Atlantic Ocean, sonar surveys have occasionally returned images that do not match any known wreck in official databases. That in itself is not unusual. Ships have been sinking in this region for centuries. Naval vessels, cargo carriers, fishing boats. Storms in the Atlantic are violent. Losses over long periods add up. Not every wreck has a name attached to it, but some of the sonar returns from these depths have more unusual profiles. Certain outlines suggest hulls that do not conform to any registered vessel type. Others suggest structures that seem too orderly, too intact to be simple debris. A few reports have described metallic-looking readings at depths where preservation should be difficult but not impossible, given the cold and pressure that dominate the trench. Around these observations, an entire folklore has grown. Some observers link the sonar returns to lost military craft. Others frame them within broader speculation about the Bermuda Triangle, since parts of the deep Atlantic sit close to regions with long histories of unexplained disappearances. A smaller group entertains more exotic possibilities, imagining that not every submerged object in the trench originated on the surface. Formal investigations, when they occur, usually deliver less dramatic conclusions. Most anomalous sonar returns turn out to be either identifiable wreckage that was previously undocumented, unusual rock features on the trench walls, or ordinary sediment shapes distorted by the imaging process itself. Sonar at extreme depths is imperfect. Small errors in interpretation can create large stories, but the pattern that keeps this entry alive is the sheer volume of what remains uncatalogued. The Puerto Rico Trench, like other deep-sea trenches around the world, has not been mapped in detail across most of its floor. The known wrecks are a fraction of what is actually sunk into this region across recorded history. Somewhere down there, in cold water under enormous pressure, ships that never made it home are quietly resting, and not all of them will ever be identified. Sonar returns will continue to surface. Some will match records, others will not. Each unmatched image raises the same question in a slightly new form. How many pieces of our own history are still down there, waiting to be recognized? Number 6. The USO Reports. For decades, sailors, submarine crews, and coastal observers have reported sightings of what they describe as fast-moving objects entering, exiting, or traveling through the ocean at speeds and depths that do not match any conventional vessel. The term used for these encounters is unidentified submerged objects, or USOs. Official navies have quietly filed reports of them for years. Some accounts describe glowing lights descending into the sea. Others describe underwater objects tracked briefly on sonar that then appear to leave the water at extreme velocity. Fishing crews have described unexplained wakes at night, cutting across otherwise calm surfaces at speeds that a normal boat cannot maintain. Most of these reports have conventional explanations lurking behind them. Bioluminescent plankton can produce strange lights near the surface. Whales, when they move at depth, can leave sonar traces that pattern-matching software struggles to interpret. Human error, atmospheric refraction, and mistaken identification of surface craft account for a large share of the total, but some cases remain awkward. A subset of USO reports come from professional observers with training, technology, and no obvious motivation to fabricate. Naval crews and pilots have described events that do not slot neatly into either the biological or the mechanical categories. What is unusual is not that a strange light was seen. Strange lights are seen constantly. What is unusual is the specific behavior, sudden vertical descent into the water followed by no evidence of impact, or fast horizontal travel below the surface at velocities that would rip apart a conventional submarine. None of that constitutes proof of anything exotic. But the deep ocean is one of the few remaining places on Earth where a properly designed object could operate for extended periods without being observed. The vast majority of the water column is beyond routine surveillance. Long-range sonar arrays cover only specific corridors, mostly for strategic and military reasons. The rest is dark. That is the underlying reason USO reports keep resurfacing. Not because there is confirmed evidence of anything strange, but because the ocean is a perfect stage for the question. It hides, it cushions, it absorbs. And every year, credible witnesses continue to describe events that we cannot fully classify. The ocean is doing what the ocean has always done, refusing to explain itself. Number 5. The Milky Sea Phenomenon. For centuries, sailors traveling through certain warm ocean regions have reported one of the strangest sights described in maritime history. The surface of the sea, over vast distances, glows with a steady, uniform white light. Not sparks, not scattered flashes, a continuous milky sheen, stretching horizon to horizon, as if the ocean itself has been switched on from below. For a long time, these stories were treated as sailor exaggeration. They were not. Satellite imaging in more recent decades has confirmed that the Milky Sea is real. Enormous patches of ocean can, under the right conditions, become dimly luminous over regions large enough to be visible from space. Estimates of individual events describe glowing patches covering areas comparable to some small countries. The cause appears to be biological. Certain populations of luminous bacteria, when they occur in enormous concentrations, can produce a steady bioluminescent glow. This is different from the more familiar sparkling flashes produced by disturbed plankton. Milky Sea events involve a coordinated or environmentally triggered response across an unimaginably large number of individual microorganisms, all releasing light simultaneously for hours. The scale is what makes this so unsettling. You are not looking at a small patch of glowing water near a boat. You are looking at an entire section of the planet's surface producing living light. From above, it is subtle. From the deck of a ship in the middle of it, it is reportedly overwhelming. Some witnesses have described the experience as sailing across a field of soft snow, or across a section of the sky flipped upside down. Scientists still do not fully understand what triggers a Milky Sea event. Nutrient levels, water temperature, and microbial density all seem to play a role, but no complete model exists for predicting when or where a Milky Sea will appear. Some regions of the Indian Ocean are known hotspots. Other events happen without warning in places where none was expected. This is a phenomenon that most people will never witness in person. But it is real. It is documented. It is happening right now, somewhere, at any given moment, in a region of ocean that no camera is currently pointed at. The sea is not always dark. Sometimes it is quietly glowing, on a scale that dwarfs anything a city could produce. Powered entirely by life forms so small that a single drop of seawater can contain millions of them. Nothing about that should be possible, and yet it happens. Number 4. Zealandia. For most of modern history, the world had 7 continents. School textbooks, globes, and maps all confirmed the count. The story of the planet's surface was considered essentially settled. Then, in the 2000s, researchers presented a serious geological argument that the count was wrong. They proposed the existence of an 8th continent, mostly submerged beneath the southwestern Pacific Ocean, connecting the visible land masses of New Zealand and New Caledonia into a single, deeply hidden continental mass. They called it Zealandia. The idea sounds like fantasy at first. A continent, in the modern sense, is not just a big island. It is a specific geological structure. Continents are made of thicker, older, less dense material than the ocean floor around them. They rise higher above the mantle. They have their own long-term geological histories. Zealandia meets those criteria. Most of its surface sits underwater, but it is not oceanic crust. It is continental crust that has, over long timescales, sunk far enough that seawater now covers roughly 94% of its area. Only the visible peaks, New Zealand's mountains, New Caledonia's islands, and a few smaller landmasses poke above the current sea surface. Everything else is hidden. That is what makes Zealandia belong on a list like this. Because if a continent can quietly sit submerged in the modern era without appearing on standard maps for most of scientific history, then our sense of what the planet actually looks like is more incomplete than most people assume. Deep sea mapping is beginning to correct this. Bathymetric data now reveals broad continental features hiding beneath the Pacific. Sediment cores, rock samples, and gravity measurements support the classification. Zealandia is not a rumor. It is a landmass. You just cannot see most of it because it is beneath a layer of water sometimes more than 2 kilometers deep. That single fact reframes the map of the world. It means that when we look at a globe, we are looking at a partial illustration, the parts of the crust that happen to be dry today. The rest is still there, sunken, wide, old, real. Zealandia is not just a discovery. It is a warning about the limits of what a globe can show. We do not really know how many continents are down there. The one we officially added in the last decade was hiding in plain sight, under a sea that has been sailed for centuries. Number 3. The sunken structures of the Gulf of Cambay. Off the coast of India in the Gulf of Cambay, seabed surveys have documented what appear to be traces of a large submerged structure. Long geometric lines, blocky formations, and what some researchers have interpreted as urban patterning at a depth that should not contain any such thing. If the interpretations are correct, the site could represent one of the oldest submerged human-influenced landscapes ever detected. The details are technical, and the debate is unresolved. Sonar imagery in the region shows what look like straight-edged shapes and repeating geometric arrangements. Sediment samples brought up from the site reportedly include material that some researchers describe as consistent with human activity, although interpretations vary and independent verification has been difficult. At the center of the controversy is a simple question. Is this a natural formation, or is this the fingerprint of a very old human presence that predates most conventional coastal history in the region? The stakes of that question are large. If it is natural, the site becomes an interesting geological feature and nothing more. If it is human-influenced, and if it is as old as some proponents suggest, then it points toward an entire chapter of coastal civilization that would fill in a gap in the Indian subcontinent's early history, a period during which sea levels were lower and coastal plains were exposed. That gap is not a small one. Researchers who study ancient sea level change have long recognized that some of the most habitable regions during earlier periods were low coastal plains. Freshwater, fish, migration corridors, fertile land. These are exactly the kinds of environments where early human communities would concentrate. Today, those coastal plains are underwater. So it is not surprising, in principle, that submerged evidence of early human activity might exist. The Gulf of Cambay simply happens to be one of the more prominent locations where such evidence has been proposed on a large scale. Whether the specific interpretations survive further investigation is a separate question, but the broader pattern behind them will not go away. The map of ancient human settlement is not the map of dry land today. It is the map of what was dry when people were actually living on the coasts thousands of years ago. Much of that map is now beneath water, and it has barely been examined. Somewhere off multiple coastlines around the world, our own ancestors left traces of themselves that we have never properly seen. Gulf of Cambay is one of the sites forcing that possibility into the open. Number 2. The deep sea creatures that should not exist. The deeper you go into the ocean, the stranger biology becomes. Sunlight fades quickly with depth. By a few hundred meters, most of the light we take for granted is already gone. By a few thousand meters, the environment is a permanent darkness under enormous pressure, at temperatures close to freezing, with almost no photosynthesis-based food to support life. By every intuition we bring from the surface, this should be a lifeless zone. It is not. The deep ocean is populated by creatures that look like they were designed by a species from another planet. Fish with translucent bodies and internal organs visible through their skin. Predators with jaws that unhinge to swallow prey larger than themselves. Species that produce their own light using chemistry so refined that they can attract mates, camouflage their silhouettes against faint downwelling light, or lure prey directly into their mouths. Even the ecosystems are strange. Around hydrothermal vents on the deep ocean floor, communities of organisms thrive not on sunlight, but on chemicals seeping from the Earth's crust. Bacteria convert those chemicals into energy. Tube worms host those bacteria inside their own tissues. Crabs, shrimp, and fish depend on that entire chain. Whole living neighborhoods, kilometers beneath the surface, function without needing the sun in any direct way. That single fact reshapes what we mean by habitability. For a long time, biology was described as fundamentally a solar-powered enterprise. Plants use sunlight, animals eat plants, predators eat animals. All roads lead back to the sun. The deep-sea vent ecosystems break that framework at its roots. They show that a completely alternative form of life can flourish in conditions that surface biology would call impossible. And it does not stop there. New species are still being discovered on almost every serious deep-sea expedition. Regions that have been visited only once, briefly, have delivered organisms nobody had cataloged before. Estimates suggest that a very large fraction of deep ocean biodiversity remains unknown. That means, in a very literal sense, we are still meeting our own planet's inhabitants for the first time. Every deep-sea trawl, every submersible dive, every camera lowered into the depths, has a real chance of revealing an animal that no human being has ever documented. That is not something you can honestly say about most environments on land. The creatures down there do not exist because they should. They exist because life is more stubborn, more creative, and more adaptive than the surface world usually allows itself to imagine. If you had never seen a deep-sea anglerfish, and someone described one to you, you would not believe it. But it lives, and it is not the strangest thing down there. Number 1. The ocean itself. This may sound like a strange choice for a number 1 entry, but consider the situation honestly. More than 70% of the surface of the planet is covered by ocean. Most of that ocean is deep. Only a small fraction of the deep sea floor has been mapped in high resolution. Vast regions of the water column have never been directly observed by human eyes or high-quality instruments in a systematic way. The single largest space on Earth is also, by a wide margin, the least studied. That is why the ocean itself belongs at number 1. Every mystery in the previous entries, strange sounds, unexplained sonar returns, submerged structures, USO reports, Milky Seas, submerged continents, deep-sea creatures, exists inside this one enormous space. Each one is a small window into a mostly unexamined environment. Each one is a hint about a system that we have barely begun to describe. If any of the earlier items on this list should not exist, the strongest reason is simple. We do not really know what is down there. Every year, deep-sea expeditions return with new species, new formations, new sounds, and new data that require researchers to update their maps and rewrite parts of the textbook. Wreckages appear. Old objects surface, marine biology expands, and still, the majority of the deep remains untouched by direct human observation. That is the real headline hiding behind every other entry on this list. We share our own planet with a space larger than the surface we live on, and that space keeps producing things we did not expect. Sometimes the surprise is a rock formation that looked artificial. Sometimes it is a life form nobody had imagined. Sometimes it is a lost city that changes the timeline of a region. The ocean is not a decoration around the continents. It is the majority of the planet, and most of it, in a meaningful sense, is still unexplored. That is why the ocean itself belongs at the top. Not because a specific object was discovered in it, but because the ocean is the discovery. Every deep-sea find is a fragment of a much larger truth, that most of the planet's story is still down there, in cold, dark water, waiting for the right instrument, the right expedition, the right moment to bring it into the light. You are living on a world you have not fully met. Number 1 on this list is not a creature or a structure. It is the space itself. The deep ocean is still, in almost every meaningful way, the largest unknown environment human beings share, and it has barely begun to reveal what it holds. The strangest part about all of these deep ocean mysteries is not that they were discovered, it is that they keep being discovered. A sound that sounded alive, a sonar image that gripped the world, a stepped structure off a Japanese island, unmatched wrecks in a deep Atlantic trench, fast-moving objects entering the sea, an entire ocean glowing white from horizon to horizon, a submerged eighth continent hiding beneath the Pacific, sunken landscapes off the Indian coast, creatures that live without sunlight, and behind all of them, the ocean itself, a space so vast and so unexplored that every year adds a new sentence to the story. We tell ourselves that the planet is mapped, that the age of great discoveries is over, that we know where we live. The deep ocean disagrees. Beneath the calm surface, in cold dark water, at pressures that would crush a car, entire chapters of geology, biology, and human history are still waiting to be recognized. Some of them are natural formations we have not yet cataloged. Some of them are life forms we have not yet met. Some of them are traces of our own past that fell below the tide line thousands of years ago and never came back up. That is the lesson hiding inside all of these stories. The surface is not the whole planet. The map on the wall is not the map of the world. And under the waves, in the deep dark, there is more of our own home than we have any right to be surprised about. And yet, every year, we still are surprised. Because the ocean is patient, the ocean is honest, and the ocean has never once claimed to be small. Thanks for watching till the end. There's a lot more coming soon. If you enjoyed this one, subscribe so you don't miss the next video.